Homeschooling means a lot of things. It means that you have the freedom to create your own schedule. It means that you can vacation whenever you want. It means that your children can learn at a pace that works for them, and that you can choose curricula that supports your family's values. It also means that you have the freedom to incorporate so many fun activities into your children's learning. I put fun in air quotes because the actual experience of those fun activities isn't always as fun as promised. I remember once reading a blog post on the subject of homeschooling and incorporating fun activities to make learning more enjoyable for our kids. In this particular blog post, one of the highly recommended fun activities was reading biographies. The suggestion was to read biographies instead of doing other traditional learning activities for history. Well, after a moment of disbelief, I actually laughed out loud, like a for real LOL, because while I would have enjoyed reading a biography as a kid, I knew that at least one of my kids would feel like that was torture. Fun is not the word he would have used. How about other activities that are supposedly more universally fun, like a crafty project or doing something artistic? Well, I can tell you from experience that a lot can go wrong there too. Even if you yourself love arts and crafts, I can't relate. Your kids might enjoy doing part of the project, but not all of it, leaving it for you to finish. Or not. I've got unfinished projects. If you try to do the project as a group, fights can break out. Or maybe that's just my house because I do have 3 boys. I vividly remember the year that building a gingerbread house turned into a fist fight between a couple of my boys. And I wish I was joking. I still shudder when I look at a gingerbread house. Sometimes a fun project actually ends up being a distraction from the point of it all. So maybe it actually was enjoyable, but no real learning happened, which is frustrating when you needed some learning to happen. And sometimes the kids just hate the activity. It's not enjoyable for them on any level. Can't tell you how many times my kids and I have been in the middle of an activity that devolves to the point that I end up yelling, "This is supposed to be fun!" Not my proudest moments. How about we customize our homeschools by not doing any more projects that are supposed to be fun? They're supposed to help our kids learn, and instead look for learning activities that are actually fun and helpful to the kids living in our homes specifically. Not someone else's kids, not kids living in someone else's house, but our own kids. I'm Leslie Maddox, an engineer turned homeschool mom, and I want to help you customize your homeschool. Today we're going to look at how we can customize our homeschools by incorporating learning activities that are well suited for our children and families. Let's start off by looking at different aspects to learning. First, there's the understanding of concepts. For example, the idea that individual written letters represent sounds, that you can add numbers quickly by multiplying, that there are different categories of living things. Then there's the accumulation of facts and being able to retrieve those facts from memory with accuracy. For example, the process of seed germination or multiplication facts or parts of speech. Then there's the process of learning a skill, how to do something. For example, writing neatly, reading fluently, finding the area of a rectangle. And a very important aspect of learning is being able to transfer or apply what we've learned into everyday life. Word problems are a great example of this aspect of learning and can expose the disconnect between knowing and understanding math concepts and facts and how to use those math concepts and facts. You've probably noticed that there's a lot of overlap between these parts of learning. In order to have competency and literacy, for example, our kids need to understand concepts about written language. They need to learn facts about how written language works. They need to learn and practice the skill of reading. And then they need to be able to use that skill in everyday life, reading educational materials, recipes, instruction manuals, emails, news articles, whatever. And closed captioning for when they have kids as loud as them and can't hear the delightful repartee on NCIS. I want to know every word. As you're teaching your kids, your curriculum may incorporate or recommend activities that support these different aspects of learning. If you buy quality curriculum, these activities will be well thought out and should be helpful, but my experience has been that sometimes kids hate the recommended activity for whatever reason. Or even if they're willing to do it, it might not be the best use of their time or your time, since it might not help that individual child learn the concept, fact, or skill as much as it might help another kid. I've had that experience with the math curriculum I've chosen to use in our homeschool. It incorporates the use of a particular type of math block. The activities with the math blocks worked well for my oldest because he prefers interactive and physical learning methods. My middle son initially liked the visual nature of the math blocks, but he grew to hate them, I think because physical learning methods distract rather than help him. My youngest son has gone back and forth between the math blocks. I eventually incorporated the use of a different type of math block which seemed to work better for him and which he enjoyed more. I could give you other examples of learning activities that one child loved or at least tolerated and that another child absolutely hated. Or learning activities that did the job for one kid, aiding their learning, but seemed to get in the way of learning for another kid. For this reason, I wanted to help you out by putting together a list of different types of learning activities that seem to cater to particular types of learning or learning preferences. That way, you'll be able to look for curricula that incorporates learning activities that work well for your children. Or if you're in the middle of the school year and finding that a particular curriculum isn't working out the way you hoped it would, you can avoid dumping it in favor of another curriculum that might not work any better, and instead be able to analyze the problem and replace unhelpful learning activities with helpful and enjoyable learning activities. The Homeschool Plan Decoded Starter Kit contains several cheat sheets that list activity ideas for learning, categorized by learning method. You can find a link to the starter kit below. But even without my cheat sheets, think about what activities support different aspects of learning. In subjects like history, geography, science, grammar, vocabulary, and math, students need to memorize facts. It's easily and socially acceptable to be dismissive of memorization of facts, but memorized facts help students to think deeply on a topic and make associations with new material, helping them learn and remember that new material more easily. Memorizing facts requires some drill and repetition, but there's actually a lot of ways to get that repetition in. And you can tailor the drill and repetition methods you use to your students' learning preferences. I have a student that prefers learning through the written word, so flashcards, which are a mainstay in the drill and repetition world, work well for him. And he really enjoys flashcards too. He even makes his own. Written stories, historical fiction, or nonfiction, like those biographies I mentioned previously, they do work well for a student that prefers the written word because repetition is achieved in a story form. A student that prefers writing to reading the written word may get some drill repetition in through note-taking, maybe using the Cornell method, writing essays, workbooks, writing a story, or writing a letter to a historical figure. Some ideas for students that prefer to listen to the spoken word to get in some repetition of facts include audiobooks or read-alouds, lectures, or listening to educational songs. For kids that prefer doing the speaking themselves, maybe they can be the ones reading a book on a topic out loud or writing a speech, singing educational songs, doing narration, or teaching younger students. Visual students can watch videos. My kids loved the Liberty's Kids videos for American history. We've also used Magic School Bus and PBS Kids videos for science. And YouTube is a great source for educational videos as long as you screen them first. Check out Homeschool Pop. He's got a lot of great stuff. A visual learner may also like puzzles, mind mapping, graphic novels, and diagrams and charts. Kids that prefer interactive methods for learning facts have it made. There are so many educational games on the market, like Professor Noggin games, Some Swamp, Scrambled States of America, so many, and that's just the board games. There seems to be no end to the educational apps that you can find. The preferred method of repetition for my interactive student is Quizlet, which is basically fancy online flashcards that are turned into games. Interactive kids may also like salt dome apps, dioramas, building in Minecraft, drawing, workbooks, notebooking, experiments. They might even like creating their own game to practice facts. Kids that prefer physical learning methods may also like salt dome apps since that is such a hands-on activity. Dioramas, walking slowly on a treadmill while reading, listening to, or watching educational material. I noticed that for a long time, one of my kids preferred reading physical books rather than ebooks. I think he liked the feel of them in his hands and the feel of turning pages. So those are some ideas for activities for learning concepts and facts to get that information into your kids' brains. How about learning skills? What are ways for kids to learn how to do something? Students that prefer to learn by reading will love explicit step-by-step written instructions. So whatever learning activity they do, make sure that it is spelled out clearly and written down. Students that learn well from writing will do well with workbooks and can do copy work to practice handwriting and spelling, write a story to practice spelling, and write somewhere fun like on a driveway with sidewalk chalk or on a window with dry erase markers to do everything from language arts to math. Does your student prefer the spoken word for learning? Well, if they listen to you, you can try explicit verbal instructions rather than written instructions, audiobooks while following along in a book to practice their reading skills, and distance learning video lectures. If they'd rather be the ones doing the talking, try shared reading so that they can get immediate feedback from you as they increase their reading fluency, or have them teach a younger student or prepare a demonstration. The student that prefers visual learning methods to learn skills can learn a lot from YouTube videos. I know I do. Letter and word tiles or an app that uses virtual tiles are great for spelling and phonics. Math tiles and blocks are good options too. The interactive learner may like using graphic organizers and checklists as they learn. They can practice spelling and grammar through editing activities. Apps and games can help them increase fluency in areas like math and language arts. And project-based learning, or even those traditional workbooks, can be options. Kids that like to get physical with their learning may enjoy using tactile tools. They may enjoy building things, which could be great to practice that transfer aspect of learning math or reading. And let's not forget about physical letter, word, and number tiles. If this all sounds overwhelming to you, just think about what activities in general may be helpful for your students' preferred learning methods, no matter what aspect of learning you're dealing with. If your child loves to read to learn, consider a book of any type and in any form, like textbooks, fiction, biographies, reference books, ebooks. And really, don't discount those textbooks. I loved them as a kid and still do. To me, they held so much potential. Flashcards and workbooks work well too. Kids that like to write to learn may also do well with workbooks and worksheets, along with copy work, note-taking, essays, journaling, and creative writing. When it comes time to listening to the spoken word, stick with those audiobooks, lectures, read-alouds, and learning songs with maybe some podcasts thrown in. If being the ones to do the talking does it for them, get them to talk about what they're learning in any way, like narration, learning songs, teaching, or even a simple discussion. Checklists, charts, infographics, maps, puzzles, and videos are great for visual kids. Throw in puzzles, crafts, games, experiments, flashcards, and lap books for interactive kids. Those kids that need to move and touch things may like building with Lego bricks, stamping, stickers, cooking, using modeling clay, or even just walking or standing while learning. For years, my active kid did his spelling and dictation while standing at a whiteboard. Standing instead of sitting seemed to center him. I know that I just threw a lot of information at you, but more than the information itself, I'm trying to get you to shift your thinking as you help your student learn. Instead of just doing what the curriculum says and then getting frustrated when your student resists working on a subject or just isn't learning the material, go into problem-solving mode by asking yourself what's working and why. Why is it working? What isn't working and why isn't it working? And then replace what isn't working with specific activities geared to what you know about your students' needs and preferences, instead of just dumping the curriculum and grabbing something different. Because different isn't always better. In the next Homeschool Plan Decoded video, we'll get started on the fun part, curriculum research. I'll share with you how to do your research as well as the order you should do things. I'm excited to talk to you about that, and happy planning.